Hi, Dr. Revis here with an overview of Chapter 5 on thermochemistry for Chem 111. Again, this is an overview of what the chapter will look like to introduce you to the concepts and give you some tips on how to be successful in this chapter. In this chapter, you will learn about what's called thermochemistry. The key to think about, or the key to grasping thermochemistry, is to understand that we're talking about energy, and energy cannot be destroyed nor created. That is a basic law of nature. That is the law of life, and you'll learn more about how that law is conserved when we talk about the conservation of energy and matter. Okay, you'll talk about those. So you'll look at the energy basics, and one of the basics of the energy is if it goes up, energy goes up, arises, it has a potential to fall. And that rise may be a positive, and that fall may be a negative. Okay? And you will learn whether or not these concepts are endothermic, going up, pushing uphill, or exothermic, easily falling downhill. And one will be positive, one will be negative. You'll have energy in and energy out. Now, and you will calculate those, and when you calculate the energy, we report that as a delta, as a change in energy. And enthalpy will be a measure of that energy, and you'll learn all of these terms. Okay? One of the important things to remember in this chapter will be to distinguish between what's called the specific heat and the heat capacity. Let's talk about specific heat first because it's important. Specific heat is also referred to as specific heat capacity. Be sure when you hear all three terms, specific heat capacity. That's the same as specific heat. I note that in my lectures, and I tend to use both terms because many textbooks will have different terms. They'll say specific heat or they'll say specific heat capacity. Okay? When you have specific heat capacity or specific heat, which is what you'll hear most often used in Gen Chem, it will be associated with an equation that has grams in it, okay, for mass. You'll have mass when you talk about specific heat. Mass will be involved. On the other hand, when we talk about heat capacity, that is basically the property of that material regardless of its mass. Therefore, you will not have mass associated with it. So just to introduce you to those two concepts so you can pay attention to them in the lecture. So listen closely for specific heat versus heat capacity. Now, we measure these heats and heat capacities and use these equations when we're using what's called calorimetry. And that's just a way of determining the heat. Well, okay? And keep in mind, heat that goes in must have the potential to come out. So if it goes in positive, it comes out negative. Okay? If you know one magnitude of the heat in one direction, then you'll know the same magnitude in the opposite direction with an opposite sign. So in calorimetry, we determine that, and we do it all the time in the laboratory. You will learn that. But it's going to be very important that when you deal with this, you go through phases. And you want to think of that solid, liquid, gas. Okay? There's an energy for a gas evaporating, that is evaporation of a liquid to a gas, and there is an energy for melting a solid to a liquid, and you will want to look at those. It's important to note, okay, that depending on where you are in the energy curve, you will use either a formula that does not have mass or one that does have mass. Okay? So you want to be aware of that. It is not one universal formula. It depends on where you are, and you'll learn exactly where that is, but I just want to make you aware of that. That one formula will have mass involved, and another formula will not have mass involved. Okay? And you will have to differentiate between those. The one that will have mass involved will be when you have a rise and fall in temperature. The one where mass is not involved will be where you simply have no change in temperature. You're simply boiling the material or you are freezing material at that point. So you're at those areas where you're on what's called a horizontal, okay, event for the material. And you'll learn more about that. A little too much detail there. And don't let what I just told you then confuse you or anything. Just know that there's a difference in using the equations, and you'll get the detail in the full lecture. Okay? All right, take care.